The temple bells echoed across the valley, their low hum cutting through the dawn mist. Evan felt his chest tighten as he knelt before the gathering, his palms pressed to the wooden floor. Master Rowan raised his gaze, his weathered face calm yet piercing. Silence blanketed the disciples, broken only by the rustling leaves outside the temple walls. Then, in a voice steady as stone, Master Rowan said, "One among you has already lost the way." The words fell like a thunderclap, and the room seemed to contract around them. Evan's breath caught in his throat, his mind racing. Could the master be speaking of him? Liam smirked faintly, arms crossed, his eyes glinting with scorn. Maya lowered her head, trembling as though the weight of the master's words struck her too. Iris sat in the corner, still and silent, her expression unreadable, a statue of presence. Evan said, "Master, who is it?" His voice cracked, trembling. Rowan's eyes did not blink as he replied, "It is not who you think. It is who thinks they are beyond losing." The air grew heavy, and a chill spread through Evan's bones. The disciples shuffled away after the ceremony, but Evan lingered, staring at the wooden floorboards as if they might reveal an answer. His chest burned with doubt, the master's words echoing again and again. Liam said, "He meant you. Everyone knows." His tone carried both mockery and certainty, slicing into Evan's fragile composure. Evan swallowed hard, refusing to answer. Maya approached softly, placing a hand on Evan's shoulder. She whispered, "Don't let his words consume you. Doubt is part of the path." Yet even her voice, calm and steady, could not quiet the storm raging in his mind. The temple felt heavier than ever, as though the air itself pressed down upon him. Iris passed silently behind them, her steps unbroken, her gaze never wavering. Evan clenched his fists. He wanted clarity, but all he had was uncertainty, swelling inside him like a tide he could not resist. That night, the temple lay in stillness under the pale light of a waning moon. Evan wandered the courtyard, his sandals crunching lightly against gravel. He stared at the stone lanterns, their glow faint, offering no answers. His heart thundered in his chest, restless and heavy. He whispered to himself, "Am I lost already?" The silence of the courtyard gave no reply. In the shadows, Iris sat cross-legged, watching without sound. Her presence pressed upon him like the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. He bowed slightly to her, but she remained unmoving, her gaze as eternal as the moonlight itself. The cool air rushed over him, carrying the faint scent of pine. He tried to meditate, closing his eyes, but only doubt rose within. The night was endless, stretching wide around him, each second sharpening his unease. The next morning, Liam found Evan seated near the koi pond, staring into the rippling water. Liam's voice cut through the stillness. "You seek answers where there are none. Meditation won't save you." Evan tightened his jaw, refusing to reply. Liam crouched beside him, his smirk replaced by a sharp, almost pitying gaze. "Zen is an illusion. You're clinging to words, waiting for miracles." Evan's heart pounded harder, but he breathed slowly, holding the silence like armor. Liam scoffed, throwing a pebble into the pond. The ripples spread outward, distorting the koi as they darted away. "See? Even peace runs at the slightest disturbance." His laughter was bitter, echoing off the stone walls. Evan whispered, "Maybe disturbance is the beginning." His words surprised even himself. That night, Evan sat alone in his chamber, a single candle flickering against the wooden walls. He clasped the prayer beads in his hands, his breath shallow and uneven. The master's words haunted him, each syllable a chain around his spirit. He whispered, "Who am I if I am lost?" Shadows danced across the walls, twisting into forms of doubt. His mind conjured Noah's face, a reflection of his younger self, the mistakes he thought buried long ago. The silence of the night pressed in tightly, broken only by the faint chirp of crickets outside. He closed his eyes, but peace did not come. Instead, his heart ached, as if it longed for something it could not name. Tears slipped down his cheeks, and he did not wipe them away. The morning sun broke through the temple's paper walls, yet Evan felt no warmth. He sat cross-legged before the altar, his heart hammering in his chest as silence pressed against his ears. The memory of Rowan's words lingered, sharp as thorns inside his mind. He whispered to himself, "What if I am the one who has lost the way?" His voice faltered, echoing faintly in the empty hall. His breath grew ragged, as if each inhale drew him closer to collapse. Liam's laughter from the previous night haunted him still, blending with his own doubts. His chest felt hollow, as though the teachings had slipped through his grasp like water. The incense coiled upward, but even its fragrance felt distant. Evan clenched his fists on his knees, desperate for clarity, yet all he found was silence that weighed like stone. Later that day, Maya found Evan in the garden, staring at the ground as though the earth itself could offer an answer. She crouched beside him, her eyes filled with quiet concern. "Evan," she whispered, "doubt does not mean failure. It only means you are alive." Evan looked at her, his eyes wet, voice breaking. "Then why do I feel emptier with each breath I take?" Maya held his shoulder, her touch gentle but firm. "Because you are clinging too tightly. Let go, even if only for a moment." Evan shook his head, the weight of his own turmoil dragging him down. The wind stirred the leaves, carrying her words across the still garden. He wanted to believe her, but fear clawed at his heart. His silence became his answer. By dusk, Evan sought Master Rowan in the meditation hall. The master sat alone, his posture straight, his presence unshaken. Evan bowed deeply, his voice trembling. "Master, I cannot silence the storm within me." Rowan's eyes opened slowly, calm and steady. "The storm is not to be silenced," he said. "It is to be seen." Evan's breath caught, frustration burning in his chest. "But I am drowning in it," he whispered. Rowan replied, "You drown because you fight the water. Float, and it will hold you." Evan lowered his gaze, anger and despair colliding in his chest. His mind screamed for certainty, but Rowan offered none. The hall grew quiet once more, leaving Evan with only his reflection in the master's still eyes. That night, Evan dreamt of shadows. He walked through a misty forest, every step echoing like thunder in his ears. A figure emerged from the fog, his younger self, Noah, a boy of reckless pride, eyes burning with anger. The boy's voice rang sharp. "You will never be enough." Evan froze, heart collapsing inside his chest. He whispered, "Why do you return to torment me?" The shadowed boy sneered, "Because you cannot let me go." Fog pressed tighter around them, suffocating. Evan reached out trembling, but the boy dissolved into mist, leaving only silence and pain. He awoke with tears burning down his cheeks, his hands clutching his robe as if to hold himself together. When dawn came again, Evan walked alone along the temple's outer wall, his steps heavy, his eyes darkened by sleeplessness. The world was bright, but inside he felt only emptiness. He touched the cold stone, its roughness grounding him for a fleeting moment. He whispered, "What if I never find peace?" His voice cracked, the question carried away by the morning wind. Birds sang above him, their songs sharp against his sorrow. He stopped, clenching his fists, unwilling to let go yet unable to hold on. Maya's words, Rowan's riddles, Liam's scorn, and Noah's shadow all circled in his mind like storm clouds. His chest ached with longing, yet he had no name for what he longed for. Master Rowan gathered the disciples at the meditation platform beneath the open sky. The air was crisp, the morning clouds drifting lazily overhead. He spoke softly, "You will sit until the mind shatters its illusions." Evan's stomach clenched at the weight of the task. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the rustling of wind through the bamboo. Evan's knees ached, sweat trickled down his back, and still his thoughts swarmed. He whispered inwardly, "Why can't I stop this storm?" Liam cracked an eye open and smirked faintly, as if the trial were nothing. Maya breathed slow and deep, her posture unmoving, serenity flowing from her like water. Rowan's voice rang out once more, "Endure. Only when the false breaks can the true arise. Evan swallowed hard, fear and frustration clawing at him. The hours grew longer, and Evan's body began to betray him. His legs numbed, his back screamed in pain, and sweat poured across his brow. He pressed his hands tighter together, as if force could cage his thoughts. His breaths quickened, his chest rising like a storm-tossed sea. He opened his eyes briefly, and the world seemed to tilt. The temple garden blurred before him, shadows curling at the edges of his vision. "I can't," he muttered, his lips quivering. Master Rowan did not move, his eyes fixed ahead, calm as stone. Liam smirked again, whispering, "Weakness." Evan bit down on his lip until it bled. Maya turned slightly, her gaze meeting his for only a second, steady as the earth. That silent glance urged him not to collapse, yet his body shook violently. As twilight descended, Evan finally broke. He gasped, collapsing forward onto the wooden platform, his palms striking the boards. The sound echoed sharply, drawing a few startled glances. He whispered, "I can't bear it anymore." His heart pounded like a drum, shame burning through him. Liam chuckled, his voice dripping with disdain. "So much for your devotion." The words stung deeper than any wound. Evan's chest heaved, his breath ragged, his mind collapsing in chaos. Master Rowan did not flinch, his voice calm but cutting. "You break because you resist. To resist is to fight yourself." The silence that followed suffocated him, pressing like an unseen weight. Evan's tears stained the wood beneath him, his body shivering in despair. Later that night, Evan stumbled through the temple corridors, his mind unraveling. He found himself in the courtyard where the lanterns glowed faintly. A figure emerged from the shadows, cloaked in silence, the catalyst. The stranger's voice was sharp yet soft. "You fall because you cling." Evan's breath caught in his throat. "Who are you?" he demanded, though his voice quivered. The figure tilted their head, eyes unreadable, lips curling in an enigmatic smile. "Names are chains. I am the question you fear to ask." Evan's knees trembled as he stepped back, fear and awe surging together. The figure's presence felt like wind stirring fire, dangerous yet awakening. And then, as suddenly as they appeared, the catalyst melted into the night, leaving Evan trembling beneath the lantern glow. The courtyard remained still after the catalyst vanished, but Evan's chest heaved as though he had faced a storm. His thoughts swirled with Rowan's riddles, Liam's mockery, Maya's glances, and the stranger's cryptic words. He whispered, "I am breaking apart." His hands trembled as he pressed them to his chest. The lantern flickered, shadows stretching long across the stones. He sank to his knees, exhaustion overtaking him. "If this is the way, then it is fire," he muttered, tears trailing down his face. The silence answered only with the chirping of crickets and the rustle of wind through the bamboo. The night sky stretched endlessly above, and in its vastness, Evan felt both smaller and heavier than ever before. The hall was dim, lit only by the flicker of oil lamps when Evan knelt again before Master Rowan. His voice cracked as he whispered, "I am breaking, Master. Tell me what I must do." Rowan's eyes, calm as still water, held him. "Breaking is not failure. It is the door," Rowan said. Evan's chest heaved, confusion and desperation, tearing him apart. "But why does it hurt so much?" Rowan leaned forward slightly, his tone sharp yet kind. "Because you cling to what is not real. Pain is the hand that pries open your grasp." Evan bowed his head, trembling. Maya, seated quietly to one side, watched with compassion, her eyes soft in the shadows. The silence pressed heavy, but within it a seed of truth stirred. That night, Evan sat in the courtyard, the memory of Rowan's words ringing through him. He closed his eyes, but shadows rose again, forming Noah's face. The boy sneered, voice sharp. "You will never be whole." Evan's heart clenched. "You are only my past," he whispered. The shadows smirked. "I am what you refuse to release." His pulse raced, fear clawing at him, but he stood taller, staring into the specter's eyes. "You are not truth. You are a chain." The shadow faltered, dissolving slightly in the lantern light. Evan gasped, tears cutting down his cheeks. The night air cooled his burning skin, and for the first time he felt a glimmer of release. At dawn, Evan found Maya by the koi pond, her reflection shimmering beside the fish. She smiled faintly as he approached, her presence steady as always. "You look lighter," she said softly. Evan sighed, his voice trembling. I faced him. My past. It still lingers, but it is not whole anymore." Maya's gaze deepened, and she nodded slowly. "You cannot erase scars, but you can accept them. That is how they heal." He sank beside her, watching the ripples as koi darted through the water. The morning air smelled of pine, sharp and fresh. "Then maybe I am not lost," Evan whispered, his tone fragile but hopeful. Maya's hand brushed lightly across the water's surface, breaking the reflection into shimmering fragments. Meanwhile, Liam sat apart, his posture stiff, eyes fixed on the temple gate. His thoughts churned as he muttered, "Empty rituals, endless riddles. What do they truly give us?" His jaw tightened, bitterness etched across his face. He remembered his old life outside the temple, a world of ambition and fleeting success. At least that life had certainty, he whispered to himself. Yet even as he said it, a hollowness spread within him. He glanced back at Evan, who now walked with more steadiness than before, and envy flared in his chest. His lips twisted into a bitter smile, but his eyes betrayed unease. For the first time, doubt turned inward, gnawing at him. That evening, Evan returned to the meditation hall alone. He lowered himself onto the wooden floor, his hands resting lightly on his knees. The air was heavy, the silence unbroken. He whispered, "If pain is the door, then I will not run anymore." His breath steadied, his heart slowing, and for a moment he felt the storm within quiet. Shadows from the lantern flickered across the walls, but they no longer loomed as before. Instead, they seemed to bow away from him. He closed his eyes, his spine straight, his posture strong. A fragile peace touched him, as if the silence itself wrapped him in acceptance. For the first time he welcomed the stillness, not as a burden, but as a guide. The storm finally broke within Evan as he sat in the meditation hall. His body gave way, collapsing onto the floor. He gasped, his hands trembling as he pressed them against the wooden board. "I'm empty," he whispered. His tears spilled freely, his breath unsteady and raw. The silence around him magnified his despair, every moment stretching into eternity. His chest heaved as he clung to the last pieces of himself. Then something shifted. The more he surrendered to the collapse, the less it suffocated him. He let his head fall, his voice barely audible. "Take it all, I cannot hold it anymore." The tears burned, yet with them came release. He realized surrender was not defeat, but the beginning of something unseen. Master Rowan sat silently before Evan, his posture straight, his presence like an unmoving mountain. He did not reach out nor speak at first, only observed. Evan's sobs quieted under the weight of his stillness. Rowan's voice finally rose, soft but sharp. "You cling to ashes, let them go." Evan lifted his eyes, his vision blurred with tears. "If I let go, what will remain of me?" Rowan leaned forward slightly, his gaze unwavering. "That which is true cannot be taken." Evan's breath stilled, his heart struck by the simplicity of the words. The silence that followed was not heavy but spacious, like an opening door. Rowan's eyes reflected compassion, steady and profound, and Evan felt the faintest spark of light pierce his darkness. In the courtyard, the wind stirred suddenly as the catalyst appeared once more, cloaked in mystery. Evan, weary yet awake in his pain, faced them. The catalyst's voice carried like a whisper within a storm. "You fear vanishing, yet you are already not who you were." Evan steadied himself, fists clenched at his sides. "Then, who am I?" The catalyst's eyes narrowed, their lips curling faintly. "The question is the lock, not the key." Evan's breath faltered, the words striking deeper than he wished. The figure stepped closer, the lantern light flickering across their hooded face. Truth cannot be chased, only uncovered. Evan's heart quivered, fear mixing with sudden clarity, and before he could speak, the catalyst faded like smoke. Evan sank to his knees beneath the open sky, the weight of despair collapsing into stillness. The stars shimmered faintly above, distant and eternal. He whispered to the night, "I cannot win against myself, so I surrender." His voice carried on the wind, soft yet resolute. His tears fell, but they no longer felt bitter. Instead, each drop lightened him. His heart slowed, his breath evened, and the silence no longer pressed as burden but embraced him. The storm within grew quiet, replaced by a fragile peace. He felt as though the earth beneath him held him gently. The night air cooled his skin, and he bowed forward, forehead touching the stones. For the first time, he felt no resistance, only release. As dawn arrived, Evan sat upright once more, his body exhausted, yet his face calm. The golden light touched the temple walls, warm and forgiving. His eyes, once clouded with fear, now glimmered with quiet clarity. He whispered, "It was never outside me." His voice carried steady, no longer trembling. Rowan entered silently, his gaze falling upon Evan. For the first time, Evan did not shrink under it, but met it with peace. Rowan's lips curved faintly, a smile that held neither triumph nor pity, only recognition. The disciples gathered quietly behind, watching him, but Evan did not seek their eyes. He closed his own, inhaled deeply, and felt the world within him settle. A stillness bloomed, vast and unshakable. The temple grounds shimmered in the early dawn as Evan walked slowly among the stones. The air carried the scent of pine and damp earth, alive with morning bird song. His steps were steady, his shoulders no longer hunched. He paused by the old cherry tree, its blossoms trembling in the breeze, and let the silence wash through him. He whispered softly, "The world was always here. I was the one not seeing." The weight that once pressed his chest seemed gone, replaced by a calm expanse within. The rising sun bathed the temple roofs in warm light, and Evan's breath felt like part of the earth itself. His storm had stilled, leaving a spacious peace he had never known. Maya joined him in the garden, her steps quiet as falling leaves. She smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting both relief and pride. "You seem different," she said softly. Evan turned, his lips curving with a calm that was new. "Something broke, and in breaking, I found stillness." Maya's hand brushed lightly against a branch of blossoms, scattering petals that floated between them. "Peace comes not when we find answers, but when we stop chasing them," she murmured. Evan's gaze followed the drifting petals, and he nodded slowly. The tension in his brow was gone, his breath smooth and steady. They stood together in silence, the garden alive with color and birdsong, a moment of quiet recognition shared between kindred seekers. Elsewhere, Liam sat alone on the temple steps, his face drawn tight with unease. He muttered under his breath, "How does he find peace while I feel only emptiness?" His fists clenched at his knees, frustration etched in his expression. Memories of his old pursuits haunted him, the ambition, the fleeting victories, the applause. None of it filled the hollowness gnawing at him now. He glanced toward the courtyard, watching Evan's steady form, and envy burned sharper. Yet beneath it, a tremor of fear stirred, fear that perhaps Evan had found something real. Liam's jaw tightened as he whispered, "Maybe I have been chasing shadows all along." His words dissolved into the morning air, unanswered, but heavy. Inside the meditation hall, Master Rowan sat with his eyes closed, his stillness as deep as the mountains. Evan entered quietly and bowed low, his voice steady. "Master, I did not find peace. It found me when I stopped grasping." Rowan opened his eyes slowly, their calm reflecting acceptance. "Then you have seen what words cannot teach," he said. Evan's breath deepened, his chest no longer heavy. Rowan's lips curved faintly, the smallest trace of approval. The silence stretched long, yet it was no longer suffocating. It was alive, carrying presence like a flowing river. Evan's heart felt unbound, free from the chains that once held him captive. He bowed again, gratitude flooding him. Later, Evan returned to the courtyard where Iris sat silently beneath the shade of the ancient tree. She had not spoken once throughout his journey, yet her presence had shaped him as much as words. He bowed deeply before her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You showed me what silence means," he whispered. Iris lifted her gaze, her expression calm and timeless. No words passed her lips, only a steady glance that seemed to embrace him fully. Evan sat beside her, both of them unmoving as the wind stirred the branches above. The silence was no longer frightening, but alive, carrying a resonance that touched the heart more deeply than speech ever could. The horizon glowed with the fading colors of dusk as Evan stood at the temple's edge. His gaze stretched across the valley, the silence between breaths deep and steady. The world no longer felt distant or heavy but alive, pulsing with quiet rhythm. He whispered, "I am not separate from this. I was never apart." The cool breeze lifted his robe, carrying away the remnants of fear. His heart no longer throbbed with doubt, but moved with a calm certainty. He felt the ground beneath his feet firm, the sky above expansive, both holding him as one. Later, Evan sat by the koi pond, its waters reflecting the last golden strands of light. Maya approached quietly and sat beside him, her presence steady and warm. "The burden has lifted from your face," she said softly. Evan nodded, his lips curving gently. "I no longer search for what was always within." The koi darted beneath the surface, scattering ripples that shimmered in the fading light. The stillness between them spoke more than words could hold. Maya's eyes glistened, knowing that his journey had become his awakening. Across the temple steps, Liam lingered in silence, his gaze locked on Evan. The envy that once poisoned him now mixed with unease and fragile wonder. He whispered, "How did he find what I cannot touch?" His jaw tightened, yet his heart stirred with reluctant yearning. He looked away, uncertain if he could follow the same path. The night settled around him, and for the first time, his bitterness wavered. He remained still, his silence speaking of inner conflict unresolved. Inside the hall, Master Rowan sat with eyes half closed, the shadows of lantern light flickering across his serene features. Evan bowed low before him, voice steady. "I see now that there was nothing to find, only to let go." Rowan's lips curved in the faintest smile, his silence carrying a depth greater than any teaching. Evan's chest filled with gratitude, his bow pressed longer to the wooden floor. The hall's stillness breathed like a living presence, a final blessing without words. Evan walked beyond the temple gates, as the last light of day faded into the horizon. He paused, turning to gaze once more at the temple's silhouette against the sky. His lips parted, whispering, "I am here." The words carried no desperation, only clarity. The night welcomed him, vast and eternal, as he stepped forward into the path ahead. The sound of his breath merged with the wind, soft and steady. In the stillness of that moment, the journey's weight lifted, leaving only the quiet presence of being.